My name is Tony Smith. I'm a recovering alcoholic and an addict. I'm here to tell you what happened, what it was like, and how I became a follower of Jesus Christ after the fact. I was exposed to the unhealthy lifestyle early on, partying, just growing up in a broken home. I remember my mom vividly on the back porch, weekend after weekend, partying, hanging out with different guys. I remember my first early on run-in with the law was when I was like 10 or 11 years old. So I remember, living in a broken home, not having a father figure in my life. Dad was never around, didn't know who he was. I ended up turning to the streets. I felt loved. I had a family there. Got involved with criminal activity early on, stealing cars, all that stuff. I started, dibble-dabbling around and selling drugs, getting that fast money, that fast life. I really discovered early on that I became addicted to that lifestyle. I remember, smoking weed, taking pills, dibble-dabbling around in drugs here and there. And then, I got introduced to the cocaine. The first time I tried it, I fell in love. Started, doing cocaine, I see that I was slowly descending from becoming the drug dealer to the drug, user. And once I did that, it was game over. And then, as it went on, I became addicted to heroin. So once again, selling drugs, just keeping that addiction going. Spending time in prison, I was like, I'm gonna straighten my life up, get myself together, do what I need to do. As soon as I got out, started right back to hustling, selling drugs, and then once again, the power of drugs just took a hold of me and had a grip on me. Fast forward, I met a girl, moved in with her, still addicted to heroin. I remember going to an apartment complex and going through a third party to get my drugs. Well, I remember leaving the apartment complex and a guy approached me and said, "Amigo, here's my number, just call me directly." He started fronting me my drugs. I was moving more drugs. I was making money, fist over hand. It was just like, the more drugs I sell, the more they would supply me with. That was just, the dream for a drug addict. I was selling drugs, I was making money, and I was getting high for free. Got linked up with a couple guys. They started buying kilos of cocaine off of me. I had 3 or 4 different trap houses at different times. We ended up blowing up real fast. June 22nd, 2011, SWAT hit my house. And when they hit my house, they found a bunch of heroin, crack, guns, money. So I ended up going to jail. And the judge is like, my, Mr. Smith, that's a lot of drugs you was caught with. Bond set at $100,000. Well, I called my girlfriend at the time and I said, hey, it's the end of the road, this and that. And she said, oh no, you'll be out in 6 to 8 hours. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, Tony, we was making so much money, I was putting money away. I gave the bondsman $10,000. You'll be out in 6, and my ears just lit up and I was like, wow, it's not over. So I get out. Well, at the time, her attorney called the detective and said, hey, I can't meet it down there with my client to write the statement. He's like, you know what? I don't need her statement. I have enough to put Tony Smith away for life in prison, in a federal prison. He said, I know about the kilos. I know about the Mexican cartel. I know about the prostitution ring. I know about the trap houses. I know it all. I don't need your statement. And when I heard that, that wasn't even enough to make me stop. I continued to sell drugs. I was just going at it because my addiction was just so powerful that nothing scared me at the time. The week of January 22nd, I was laying in bed, still had drugs, still had, supplies of drugs coming in. As long as I was selling it, making the money, it wasn't going to stop. Well, I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know, I never grew up in the, church. I went to church when I was younger only because they gave snow cones at the end of the day, at the end of the service. But other than that, I really never was a big follower of Jesus. I never, picked up the Bible, So I always believed in Jesus or God, but I just didn't follow him. I didn't follow his ways. I remember it vividly. I rolled out of bed after doing my morning shot, and I just cried out. I said, God, I need help. I can't do this no more. And I felt that at that time, God was standing right there just waiting to take my hand and say, come here. You don't have to suffer no more. So my girlfriend at the time, I told her, I said, just, call Mary Haven and get me in there. And she called Mary Haven. She called Mary Haven, and I remember talking to the lady, and the lady was like, it's going to be 30 days before I can get you in here because the beds are so, we're just so booked. I remember her calling me back 3 days later and said a bed became available. Can you come in here? And this is after putting me on the waiting list. And I felt God moved his hand that quick and got me into rehab. I just, after I got to rehab, I was sitting there and just the withdrawals from the heroin was so powerful, I couldn't do it, What Tony wanted to say is, come get me, I can't do this because I can't do this. And I felt that once again, God intervened and said, get rid of the drugs, get rid of everything, tell the Mexicans he's on vacation, I'm staying here. They said, you got so many drugs in your system, we can't give you Suboxone protocol because the different types of drugs in your system could interact with the Suboxone and it could be fatal. So they didn't give me nothing. I mean, I was just going through it. Every pain that you've ever felt during a sick flu season, just multiply that by 10 and add to it. And the whole time, I was just praying. I was like, God, give me the strength to get through this because I don't want to give up. I don't want to go back to that lifestyle, but I can't fight this addiction on my own. I need your strength. And I felt I'm going to put my faith in God and continue to put my faith in God. He's going to get me through this, and I know he is. And I continue to pray, and I continue to pray, but every day I felt the physical strength coming back, and I felt, I was just having that. He was giving me the strength every day to get up and keep going and fighting a good fight. So finally, the 2 weeks stay was up, got out, but every day I was just continuing to pray because I know my old stomping grounds, just the enemy was there and he was just looking to devour me. He was on the prowl every move I made, but every day I got off of work in the morning, I went into my room and I prayed and I read that Bible and I prayed and I stayed there for 2 weeks. And I said, God, I can't do it. It's becoming overwhelming for me. I can't do it. And I called my temporary sponsor and I was like, hey, I need a place to go. He's like, you called at the right time because I know somebody that just opened a sobriety house and he's looking for people to move in. And I felt that God gave me that way out when I asked him for it. And I went to the sober house. 8 months later, I met my wife, Melissa, that I'm currently with now. Moved in there. Moved in with her. I remember going to a house on Ogma and putting the application in. And I put the application in, and I'm being honest. This is I have a record, this and that, and landlords try to shy away from people like me. So I remember a week into it, I didn't hear no phone calls. Finally, I called him, Jeremiah, and I said, hey, what's going on with the application? What's the status of it? Well, what's your driving record like, Tony? And I was like, my driving record? That should be the least of your worries. And when he's like, I told him everything, and he's like, well, we got somebody else that's in line, and we're going to look at their application, and, just in a roundabout way, I felt he was telling me in a nice way that we're not going to rent to you. Well, I called my sponsor at the time and I said, Ken, I I'm ready to give up. I can't do this. It's not going to happen. You know, I have a history of things. It's just, he said, pause for a minute. And he said, did you pray about it? Yes, I prayed about it. Did you put it in God's hands? Yes, I put it in God's hands. He said, well, it's no longer in God's hands. You took it back because you're worrying about it. He said, I want you to get off the phone. I want you to pray about it, and I want you to put it back in God's hands and leave it there. I hung up the phone. I prayed about it. I put it in God's hands. I called him back, and he said, did you do what I asked you to do? And I said, yes. He said, now leave it there. 3 minutes later, the phone rang, and Jeremiah called me and said, Tony, my wife and I talked about it, and we're going to give you this opportunity to move into the house. Can you meet me on Saturday with the first month's rent and the first deposit? And once again, I seen the power of God just work, and it's just like, I mean, how's that happen? What the enemy meant to destroy me, God moved his hand and meant good. It turned it into good, because when I contacted my attorney 2 years into my sobriety, I asked him, Dave, what's going on with my case? And he said, I have great news. He said, we're going to get this case dismissed, because the warrant was signed June 22nd, 2011. It's dated 6/2/2011, 3 weeks before. He said, so it's a technicality. And I felt God had his hand in that moment, because he knew the outcome of my story. And, you know, like I said, going on 11 years, you know, and I can honestly say that, you know, I kicked this addiction all with the power of God. There was no substitute except for prayer and, you know, just doing things that God laid on my heart, and just reading the Bible, and you know, it's just countless of stories that I can tell you how I've seen God move in my life. And yeah.